there is a lot of sort of disgusting homophobia out there around women's footy. I was that depressed from football, but I think funding is probably the most important thing at this stage. It is grossly underfunded.
Welcome to 40G. Kate McCarthy, thanks so much for joining the 40G podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I might copy that as my new LinkedIn bio, actually. Thank you. That was glowing.
You're very welcome.
Can't promise it's going to deliver, but I'll do my best.
Now, no pressure, but as we said, you are the 40G's first guest. So, you know, you've got a pretty big bar to set.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully it's not the greatest it'll ever be, because you want to leave people wanting more, but hopefully it's not awful that they never come back.
Oh, look, I think we're pretty privileged to have you on as the first guest, because when I think of 40G, it's basically you on two legs. So.
Yeah, well, I'm all about YTG, so why would I not be about 40G?
Slap a number in front.
Absolutely, I love it. No, I love what you're doing, and it's obviously something that's close to my heart, and also need to be able to, I think, bring as many women and girls along for the ride as we can, and there's plenty of space for all of us out there. Doesn't have to be one or the other. There is plenty of space for all of the women, all of the girls, all of the gender neutrals in sport, and there's a place for everyone.
Absolutely. We love to collaborate here. Now, you are very well known for being extremely modest. So I am going to be Bob Jane T-Mart and I'm going to pump your tyres up for you. So I've done a little bit of research, as I do, and I need you to say whether this is true or false. So, represented Queensland in cricket.
True.
Excellent. You've represented Australia in touch footy.
True. And
then you were part of the inaugural Brisbane Lions team.
True.
2017 leading goal scorer for Brizzy Lions.
True.
2017 All-Australian player.
True. And
then you went to St Kilda and Hawthorn for AFLW.
I did. That was the beginning of the end. No,
absolutely
no
not.
Disrespect to those clubs. Absolutely. That was all on me, not on them.
That was the end of the beginning.
It was.
So what I can gather from all of that is that you're just one of those bloody overachievers.
I'm one of those people that loves sport and will do anything they can to play sport or watch sport. So I think that has nicely I've found sports that I was okay at, better than some people at, and it allowed me to find the things that I loved in life. And I think sport has been a great vehicle for me to allow me to work out how to work as a team, how to play a role, how to interact with people, but also how to live my life to the fullest and enjoy the things that I enjoy about life.
Absolutely. And last question. Is your nickname known as Kathy Freeman?
Oh, well, that's on Wikipedia.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so
it never lies, as we know.
How that started, I need to try and change that. I don't know. Apparently anyone can change Wikipedia, but I need to get people onto changing that. It started because it was at Brisbane and Daniel Merritt was one of our assistant coaches, and noteworthy the first few months of our pre-season. I say few months, it was probably like a couple of weeks in the first season of pre-season, and Rog got up the front and said, guys, we have a real lack of nicknames in this team. So we are going through, we're listing everyone's number in the team and you're writing down nicknames that you can come up with, and they need to stick because there's too many first names.
Yes.
It's not what footy culture is about, and it needs to change. And someone came up with mine being like Kathy Freeman. So that is like the initial start point of it. And then it kind of just went to Kathy, and I hated it. And we all know the folklore of nicknames. The more you hate them, the more they stick.
Yes.
So Kathy just kind of evolved. And then when I got to St Kilda, I did a segment called Chatty Kathy, because in I think an era well before us, there was a doll called the Chatty Kathy doll, which was terrifying. And so it kind of just went from there, and then it's like Chatty Kathy from there. But yeah, my footy nickname is Kathy, but not so much. I've never been called Kathy Freeman because I couldn't do that justice, that's for sure.
I think we bring that back. Because you are very well known for your speed across all sports, right?
Yes, I am quick, mainly probably because I can't run for long distances and lengths of time, so I needed to make it count when I needed to do it. So yes, very
play
quick.
To your strength.
Yes, that's
Good.
it. Yep.
Right. And obviously now you're working across the sports media space, which is obviously pretty cool because you got to be at the top level in your sport, and now you're sort of rewriting the sport from the sidelines.
Yeah, I am. And I think it's something that naturally evolved. I was a teacher prior to being able to be full-time in this. And while I was playing footy, I was a teacher. So have always had the gift of the gab and being able to explain things to people. And it's something that I really loved and enjoyed, and never was really one to shy away from public speaking or sort of being the center of attention or anything like that. But yeah, it really did happen quite naturally. When I started playing footy, I knew nothing about footy. And to be honest, I think I was better at footy when I knew nothing about footy.
Yeah.
But the more I've known about footy, the more I've been able to talk about it and explain it to other people, and therefore sort of get into more of a broadcasting role. So, it's been something that has really evolved naturally, but I'm very grateful for it as well.
Now, I definitely want to dig deeper into when you said that the more you learnt, the worse you got, essentially, because I can relate to that. But before we get there, before we talk about Kate as the, AFLW Channel 7 superstar, I want to know more about Kate and your childhood, and I guess the role that sport played in your childhood, the lessons that you learnt, and how it's ultimately shaped who you are today.
Yeah, I think to start with, I was just a kid that played every sport possible. So we all had the sports that were rolling through primary school that we'd all participate in. Do your cross country at the start of the year, then you'd transition into either swimming or athletics. Obviously, growing up in Queensland, beautiful climate, beautiful lifestyle. It's the perfect way to explore the outdoors as a kid is to play sport.
Bit nicer than Melbourne, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And then it was kind of my dad was huge into sport, and so was my sister at the time. Actually, she's 2 years older than me, and as a younger sibling, I feel like we all just do what our older siblings do, and we work out whether we want to keep doing it or we work out whether we go somewhere else with it. I first started playing cricket, as you said previously, and that was my first sport. And my sister was actually the one that brought home, which is hilarious now to look back on because she has not continued in sport. And she was the one that in our primary school, they were starting a cricket team for our primary school to all play in. And she brought home the flyer and said to my dad, who could not be prouder, I reckon, of my sister, that she's brought home a cricket flyer and wants to play cricket. And Dad said, oh, why don't you come along as well, Kate? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I watch the cricket with you guys. I love it. So let's do that. So I started playing in obviously a mainly all boys team as it was back then. There was not many girls playing many sports really, apart from kind of netball, which is very stereotypical for me to say, but that's how it was. Girls played netball and that was the start and the finish of it really.
Yeah.
And so there was no real previous team. So I think I had that kind of benefit of not knowing that I shouldn't be playing. So it was like the first team that we'd had at the primary school. So my sister started playing, I started playing with her, and then just a whole heap of boys. I think there was one other girl in the team, and my dad coached the team. So it was so much fun. It was very enjoyable. And from there, I pretty much didn't stop playing cricket until I was about 19 or 20. And I loved it. I lived for it. I remember a whole sort of real bonding experience for my dad and I.
Yeah.
So we'd grow up watching the test matches together. I'd live for cricket. I would watch on Boxing Day waiting to see what Matthew Hayden would roll out with his new gear, because that's when they launched all of the new products. And then I'd try and convince my dad to take me down to the Greg Chappell Cricket Centre and buy me that bat that Matthew Hayden was using in the Boxing Day test. And I think cricket is a really weird sport in the sense that it's so individual. Like you can pinpoint in cricket anyone's impact by looking at the scorecard basically, except for the fielding elements. And yet it's a team sport where you need everyone to contribute, but it is so individual because you know your exact sort of impact on the game that you've had. But cricket was, I think, something that I just absolutely loved. There was so many different skill sets to it. You've never, as a cricketer, I think, perfected anything. It's a really challenging sport in that you bat and you get a good ball early and you're out and you sit on the sideline for the rest of the day. And
Think about it.
Yeah, and then you get to go out, and I loved fielding because I loved the element of just always feeling like you were in the game and being sort of putting myself in positions where I thought the cricket ball was going to go and stuff like that. But ultimately as a child, my life revolved around sport, namely cricket, a little bit of athletics, but yeah, pretty much lived for cricket. I also sort of thought that I'd always be the first woman to play for the Brisbane Broncos. I never thought I'd be the first woman to play for the Brisbane Lions. I grew up watching rugby league. I'd run around in the backyard with Darren Lockyer's number on the back of a Broncos jersey and playing imaginary football with myself, pretending to be tackled, playing the ball,
always
kicking,
winning,
chip and chase, scoring tries. Yeah, and I think we ended up sort of moving out to a property on acreage in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, and I'm almost certain that was because I was annoying mum and dad so much in a small property. I needed a massive backyard, so
send her outside and let her run.
Yeah, we had acreage. Like any sport. I remember we got a border collie, and her best contribution was I'd have a golf ball and a tee at the top of the hill. We lived on this massive hill, and I'd just like drive the ball down the hill, and she'd run and retrieve the ball and bring it back to me, the golf ball, and then I'd hit it again. And that was like the greatest thing that you could ever train a dog to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if the sun was up and I wasn't at school, I was outside playing some sort of sport or being active or annoying my dad to take me to the cricket nets.
Yeah. So I guess now, knowing what you know now and obviously working in sport, what foundations did sport give you from a young age?
Oh, I just think it provides kids so much, like, especially when you start at an age where you're working out who you are as a person, how to interact with other people, the ability to interact in a sense that it's not all about you in a team. And I think being part of teams where the coach was really, whether it was my dad or other people, really instilled that in us all from a young age. You're only as good as sort of your team is. And I think that taught me so much. I think it teaches you how to lose well as well. I was so competitive, like so competitive. I still am. And I think you need to be like borderline a little bit nuts to be able to make it as sort of an elite athlete. You have to have this drive in you that people that don't have it just don't get, which is completely understandable. And it's probably they're a little bit more sane than we are. But yeah, like it gives you that drive. It gave me a lot of purpose. Like I was someone that I never really felt where I fit in at school because I wasn't extremely academic, but I wasn't awful at school either. But I wasn't the popular girl, but I also wasn't super unpopular. But because of that and because of sport and going to an all-girls high school and that sport not being super valued, I sort of always felt like I didn't really know where I fit in. And that's probably only because I fit in across all of the groups. But as a kid, you don't know that. You think, well, I don't really have my thing or my clique or my whatever it is. And I think sport gave me that, which made school a little bit harder, but it made sport so much better. So I think it taught me so much, but it also, looking back, taught me a lot about myself as well. But that's probably been learnt on reflection.
Yes. In introspection many years later.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, because you were part of the inaugural AFLW season. So what was your transition into AFLW? And I guess, what did it look like back then?
Yeah, so I started playing, I reckon, when I was, it was a year before probably the AFLW had been announced. So it would have been like at the absolute latest 2015. I reckon I played a few games and the way I got into it, I went down to a training session with a friend of mine that was playing footy and she said, just come along to training. It's heaps of fun. And I didn't think I could actually play because I have a pacemaker and didn't think that I could play contact sport. That would have been the thing that I'd been told the whole time, that you can do whatever you want, you just can't play contact sport. And I'd never question it because I'd never wanted to play contact sport. And then I went down to a training session and absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I was awful, like awful. And like growing up watching rugby league, like when you kick the ball in rugby league, you kick it as high as you can so that your team can come and either pressure or intercept the ball and score. And so I was used to kicking, like you call them bombs, in the backyard with my dad. And I thought that's how you kicked a footy. And we all know that's probably the worst kind of kick you can receive from someone on a football field. And I think when at training, I just loved it. Like it didn't matter that I was no good. And I kind of liked that I was no good because I needed a new challenge. And like I'd gotten to the point with touch football where I'd sort of played underage stuff for my country. I'd gotten to the point where I was kind of like, I don't know if I love this anymore. I need to find something different. I was doing uni at the time, so I was time poor for cricket. It's all day Sunday when you only have 1-2 days off a week when you're working or working full time and studying. That you don't really want one of those to be taken up with standing out in the sun for the entire day. So that quickly put a stop to cricket. And then I think, as every team was back then, they were short on the weekend and they said, look, can you play? And I said, I actually don't think I can. Like I've been pretty much told I can't play contact sport. So if I get tackled, like I have no idea what's the worst thing that could happen. I've just been told no and never questioned it. So obviously I said yes. So I rocked up to the game and I was like, look, I can, like, I was quite anxious, to be completely honest. Enough. I was like, I'll just stand it full forward. Like if the ball comes to my area, it'll get there and I won't get hurt because I will probably be nowhere near it. And I reckon I went out and stood in full forward for about 20 seconds. I was like, this is so boring. I need to go up and get the footy. So then I sort of just started chasing the ball. I think I kicked a couple of goals. I was still awful, like really bad, but loved it. And I sort of made that decision post that game and just the feeling that you get in a footy team and how different that feel was from other team sports I'd played. I was like, I need to go see my cardiologist. So I booked an appointment with my cardiologist to just find out if I actually could play because I wanted to keep playing. And then he basically was like, look, I don't see there being an issue with you playing. The force that could be elicited on a football field compared to what is the force that's required to actually damage a pacemaker or the wires would be pretty extreme. So he basically said I could. I eventually told my mum that I'd been playing footy, and then I was like, but I've already seen the cardiologist. That kind of was the sweetener. And then, yeah, it's like the old saying, ask for forgiveness, not permission. So if I'd asked for permission, I wouldn't have been allowed. But on the flip side of it, it all worked out fine. And footy in Queensland back then was so different to what it is now. It's grown so much, and especially in the women's space.
Yeah.
And you put that down a lot to what the Brisbane Lions and the Gold Coast Suns girls have done up there to grow the game, and the administration and football, QAFL as well, to be able to grow that. They've done a fantastic job in the space. But yeah, it was, I think I played half a season of the league that's equivalent to the VFL, so the quaffle, and then ended up in like the academy side. And
you were best and fairest in the quaffle too.
Yes.
Tick.
Yeah, that was insane and very like questionable. I think I just wore bright boots and had bright hair and got votes.
Easily rememberable.
Yeah, I think so. But a win's a win.
Absolutely, we take everything.
And then like it was just like the perfect timing. Really made the Queensland sort of academy. Then there was an exhibition game on the G probably a couple of months before the AFLW draft. And this was back when there were two teams in Melbourne. It was the Western Bulldogs or Melbourne. And if you look back through those teams now, they were absolutely loaded with superstars. Superstars. Like the makeup of the Melbourne team would have been 4 of the Melbourne teams in the AFLW. So superstars from Collingwood, Carlton, Melbourne, and I've completely forgotten who the 4th Melbourne team was in the first AFLW season, but whatever that was. It's a glaringly obvious one that I've forgotten. But they were superstars and we got absolutely pumped. So we were playing as the Brisbane Lions and we were playing against Melbourne, who were either Melbourne or the Western Bulldogs. So the likes of Daisy Pearce, Elise O'Day, or like go back and look at the team because it was insane. Yeah. And yeah, we got spanked, but I kicked 2 goals and I was best on ground. And
again, that's
it
all
was
that matters.
amazing. And I remember talking to Craig Starcevich, the first coach of the Brisbane Lions, a few years down the track about that game. And he said that Gil McLaughlin came up to him after the game and said, like, oh, you got a bit of a way to go kind of thing, but at least you found someone, like hinting at me, because all the girls that were massive from Brisbane were very well known. Emma Zilke, Emily Bates, that have played in those exhibition matches, and I was just someone that was completely unknown.
A wild card.
So that was kind of, I think, the game that helped to get me over the line, to get me drafted.
Yeah.
But it was just the perfect coincidence that I started playing footy when I did, and basically followed the very small pathway into the AFLW. So that was kind of how it all evolved.
Right. And then when you went from sort of quaffle into AFLW, what was that like then? And, what was your expectations, I guess, and did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, I think I had no real expectations because I hadn't actually really followed AFL that closely either. As I said, I was more of a rugby league, cricket kind of person growing up. And then, the expectations were, it was just wild that the first day of the preseason that I got something with a Brisbane Lions logo on it. We rocked up,
merch.
Like dead set, like our lockers had our name on it. And I think back to, I played for Australia at touch football, and it's an amateur sport. You pay to play, you pay to go away, you pay for all your uniform and everything like that. And it's not very well supported because it's not well funded, which makes sense. But then I was playing AFL for an AFL club, and like looking back, like it was the bare minimum, like absolutely the bare. We had one training shirt for the first 12 weeks of preseason because the order hadn't come in, and one pair of shorts. But like I was so grateful. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. We get to train 3 times a week. Like we've got GPS units in, they're measuring our stuff. Like we have access to everything. We have a gym that we can use. We get 5-minute massages from physio students before training.
Wow.
How incredible is this? Like that was mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
We have access to a physio. We get all of this stuff. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm glad we've come a long way because
we got 2 training shirts now.
Yeah, but like it was mind blowing for me, and it was something that was so cool and so amazing to be a part of, and just like could not imagine ever sort of doing that from a young age. So I think when you have no expectation, everything surpasses it. And it was great. It was amazing. It's so cool to be a part of the first season. It could have been anything that it was, and I would have been grateful to be a part of it. But it surpassed everything, I would say. Yeah,
definitely. And you obviously were still working during all of that?
Yeah, so I was teaching full-time, or as close to full-time as I kind of could. I think I cut back in the season to like 4 days a week. And yeah, it was tough, but I felt so grateful to be able to do it.
Yeah.
As the seasons went on, it got tougher and tougher, and the ability to feel grateful for all of the work you're doing and all of the work you're expected to do did sort of start to wear quite thin. But in that first season, it was just like, wow. And like, I was a teacher, so all of my colleagues would come to a heap of my games. The kids were just like incredible. They were so proud. It was one of the coolest things to have all these kids that you'd teach and they want to ask you about your game, or they come to your game and watch you play your sport. And it was something that has sort of really set me up for the job that I'm doing, and something that I'll be forever grateful to have been a part of as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so what you were saying earlier is that you felt the first season was your best season, and then sort of the more you learnt, the worse you got, the more you overthink things. Explain that a little bit more to us.
Yeah, well, I think to start with, it was easily the fittest I've been that first season of footy. And then that also obviously helps a lot. And then I sort of became more aware of the tactical side of football. And I really love that. I love knowing how things work, why they work a certain way. And this is of no fault to like the coaching staff of overcomplicating anything. I was just sort of like someone that wanted to be like a student of the game. I wanted to learn as much as I could about football to be the best that I could. And then I think definitely the second season, I was wildly unfit when I came into preseason because of a fair bit that had happened sort of around the club and around the team at the time, which had just not made it not a not enjoyable place, but a place that I kind of didn't want to be as much as I had been the first year. And there were a few things that sort of led to that, which made it, I sort of resented it a little bit in the second year, which ultimately put me behind physically, which is fair enough. If you don't do the work, you don't sort of reap the rewards of it in a sport where you're punching out so many kilometres, and you need to at least have a baseline when you come in. And then, yeah, as I sort of got further advanced in learning the tactics of football as well, I think I started to be more of a leader in the team and being able to help others. But I think that impacted my ability to focus on my own role. I think I was a little bit more concerned with helping others and in the forward line, obviously holding a structure and helping others get into their structure, rather than worrying about, okay, what's my role? What do I need to get done here? What do I need to tick off before I can help other people? I think that's kind of the steps that I got around the wrong way. How can I help you? But I also need to be doing the right thing myself structurally to be able to do that. So I think little elements of that. And I think that was quite evident when I eventually sort of went to St Kilda, and then definitely evident when I went across to Hawthorn, when I was sort of really on the outer of being able to play good football, also playing like a role where in a new club we got a lot of young players, and focusing on almost being an on-field coach at times for them, rather than making sure my football was what it needed to be.
Yeah. So you sort of became that more, the leadership role sort of overtook that, but I guess to the benefit of the team as well. So your role itself changed slightly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there were times where in Hawthorn's first year, clearly the goal of the team, we were never going to set the world on fire. Obviously, going into every year, you think you're going to be a contender for the premiership, but the reality is we were in our first year of the competition, along with 3 other teams, against teams that had now been playing for 7 seasons as a group. So
yeah, exactly.
The reality of that just sort of is clear, that first year you're looking to develop players, you're looking to get the systems right to start with, and then you build from that. So that was obviously the goal of the coaching staff and everything like that, which is completely fair. So I think I was sort of played more of a role to help others rather than play myself, which looking back, I wish I'd kind of approached it in a different way, which might have given my career a little bit more longevity, but it all happens for a reason, I suppose. And I wouldn't be where I am now if I was still playing football, and I love where I am now.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting because even me, myself, like having sort of represented Australia in pole lacrosse and then trying to build up my career in football, I was always best when I was under coach and I just had natural ability and went off natural instinct. I think that sport is a game of split moment seconds, and the second that you second guess a decision thinking, is that the right structure? Is that what my coach would want? You miss your ability to act on something. And that, I think, well, personally, it's definitely impacted my game, and I've had to sort of go back, and even coaching now, I say to the girls, you still need to act on your natural instinct first and foremost, because that is what sets you apart from everyone else.
I think that's the biggest lesson for coaches that are listening is there's different athletes that will need all the things that they need to get to the position that they want to get to, or they'll need the structures in place to understand what they need to do. And then there's other athletes that if you give them all of that, they're absolutely not going to play their best football. And there's benefit in finding the happy medium or working out what players need what. And that's why like coaching is such an art, because every player that you have on your list, no matter how big or small your list is in your respected sport, is different, and they all function differently as people, but also as players and as athletes. And what this player needs is completely different to what this player might need. And you need to be able to do that. And coaching it has to be kind of a one size fits all. But a one size won't fit all.
Yeah.
So you need to be really hands-on with your players and working out. I think the most important thing when you're coaching is getting to know your players and getting to know how each player sort of functions so you can best support them. Because if you can support them and they feel like you know how they function or you know how they tick or what makes them tick, they'll also give you the most that they can as a player as well.
Yeah, and also encourage them to take a risk. And if you do something and it doesn't work out, you shouldn't be doing things out of fear of missing or something like that. It should be out of, the courage to do something. And if it doesn't go right the first time, that's not the be all and end all. But, that could... People that are courageous on the footy field, at least, you can just see them and they shine.
Completely agree. And I think there's moments in footy where you've had coaches where you think, like, you make a mistake on field. I've spoken about this with players that I've played with, and we'd be like, oh, God, like, we're going to see that in the review on Monday. And to have that going through your mind when you're playing football is probably the worst mindset you could be in if you're already forward projecting to the mistake that you've just made and thinking of the shame that's associated with that, that's going to happen in a few more days. Like, how is that the right mindset to be currently playing football in?
Exactly. That's right. So I guess you've talked about how you sort of transitioned towards the back end of your career where things changed a little bit for you. What were some of those challenges that you faced, and did you start seeing yourself and your self-worth tied to your performance?
Yeah, I think definitely the last couple of years. So I reckon the first 5 seasons of footy, I never missed a team selection. If I didn't make the team, I didn't actually have an injury until my 4th year. So I played every game possible up until that point. And then I started to have injuries and sort of form slumps associated with those injuries because of my ability to sort of get up and play and perform because of the pain that I was in. And then the 5th season and 6th season in particular were really, really tough with being in and out of the team and being sort of working hard as I thought I could work and still not being able to be selected and break through into the team. And then that's the sort of stuff that really makes you question what you're doing and if you really like it or if it's sort of giving you what you still need out of it. I think when I got delisted from St Kilda, I still felt like I had more to offer and I really wanted to try and get picked up somewhere. And like I kind of looked at footy and was still really determined to keep playing. Then when sort of I got to Hawthorn and the same thing had kind of played out as what played out the year before with making the team, getting dropped, pushing hard to try and be reselected, not making the team week in, week out. That sort of cyclical nature of building up to a Wednesday team selection to the point where you kind of tell yourself you're not going to make it because you're like, oh, the reality is you're not going to make it because what have you done this week that's been better than last week? Probably nothing. And then you get to the team meeting or you have your chat with the coach and they tell you you're not making it. And like, even though you've tried to tell yourself you're not going to make it so you don't be disappointed, like it's still just like this, this heartbreaking feeling that you're like, oh, another week where I'm sort of sitting on the sideline or great, can't wait to do running on my own on Saturday while the girls are playing footy. And then you have this awful sort of complex where these are like the girls that you spend the most time with all week and you want them to play really well for their sake and you want them all to achieve really well. But in the back of your mind, you know, if they play really well and they win, or not even winning, but if they all tick their goals, they all hit what they need to hit, where's the spot for me then in the team? And I sort of never wanted to be the person that would wish anything but good things on my teammates. But when those thoughts start coming in, we're like, oh, like she hasn't done much. Maybe that's my spot. It's kind of like, that's awful. Like, why am I sitting here thinking that? Like, that's a red flag for me. Even when I sort of had like initial list meetings or re-signing meetings with Hawthorn, like the writing was so on the wall. Like there was no way I was getting another contract. I think I'd played like 3 games. I think the one that I got in the last round was a pity game. And like there was no way that I was getting re-signed. And I knew it. And I was talking to my partner at the time, who's now my wife, and I was like, I'm so determined. Like, I think I've still got good footy left in me. I didn't get to show that this year. Like, I think I'll be okay. Like, I can play VFL for a little bit and hopefully get another list spot. And she was like, yeah, sure. Like, whatever you want to do is fine. And then we kind of had like a couple of weeks had passed and we had like a really honest conversation. And I was like, I don't really know, like, if I'm still feeling the way that I was a couple of weeks ago. Like, what do you think? And she's like, can I be really honest with you? And I was like, yeah, please. And she was like, the lows that I have seen you like experience the last 2 years compared to the highs that I have seen you experience do not add up at all. And I was like, wow, like for you to be the person that sees me the most, lives with me, deals with everything. Yeah. For you to be saying that that kind of really hit home. And I was like, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If I actually reflect on this is me just wanting to sort of go around again and think that I can get there. But the reality is it's probably going to be very similar to what the last 2 years have been. And I don't actually think I have that in me anymore. And the joy for it had been lost.
Yep.
And if she couldn't see me enjoying it, she couldn't see me. Even like the wins that I think back to in that last year at St Kilda, like I was like, yeah, like that's great. Like how good, we won a game. Like
Yeah.
I'm happy to have been a part of it. But then to think back to those feelings when you're not making the team, you're sitting on the sideline, you're thinking sort of those conflicting thoughts about your teammates. That doesn't add up to
And then the
what
impact
I was
it has on your
experiencing.
life outside of sport as well, with your relationships, with everything.
100%. Like I was that depressed from football that I had no other relationships because of how unhappy I was. And that's nothing on the club. That's nothing on football. That's me coping with not being selected, with feeling the depths of isolation, with not feeling great, because your self-worth is really associated with whether or not you're making the team.
Yes.
When you get to that point, when your name's on the board, when you're ready to go and you're not picked, you feel like absolute crap as a person, which has nothing to do with you as a person. But as a footballer, when you are that's you as a person in your head.
Yeah.
And ultimately just became way too much. And the minute I sort of decided that I was going to retire, so I quit before I got fired, essentially. So they never got to delist me.
Yeah, the upper hand.
Yeah, I was like, well, guess what? I'm retiring.
Love it.
Honestly, and this sounds really dramatic, but the minute I made that decision, I was just like, oh my God.
The relief.
I am so much happier
Yeah,
now.
and free.
And even watching footy that first season after I retired, I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
am so much happier. I don't have this like guilt hanging over my head when I've done a session or when I've done this or done that, or reflecting on looking forward. Like I was just living way more in the moment, enjoying my life as it was playing out, not thinking ahead or thinking behind.
Yes. And I think the big thing here is that as an athlete, you think that sport is your whole life, but really it's just a chapter. It's not a book. And do you think that when, you wanted to come back for that other year, was it to prove the point, or was it more like an identity crisis that beyond footy you don't know what Kate is?
No, it was definitely like all associated with ego.
Right.
Like it was me being like, no, I'm worth playing. I'm worth this. I'm better than that. Like I should have been playing this whole time, blah, blah, blah. It was all solely associated with that. More so than being like, what will I do if I don't play footy? Because I was teaching, I had jobs, I had work, but like I felt like I still had more to give as an athlete, really, more so than as this is my whole life. This is who I am. And I think that's the unique thing about AFLW as well, which I think is something that we should try not to lose from the game, is everyone that's there either has a job part-time or less than part-time now with how full-time it's becoming, or they're studying. And I think that is something that we can't lose from our game. We don't want to go to the model where the boys are at now, where they're completely full-time. They're footballers. But if like the system chews you up and spits you out very quickly if you don't make it, or if a coach at your club has a certain opinion of you that's really difficult to change, and rightly or wrongly so, that's the reality of it. And if you get drafted at 18, say you're on a system for 3 years, you're 21 and you're not on a list anymore.
Yeah.
What do you do? And
That's
that's the reality of it for the boys, which I hope we never lose in the women's side of things, because we want to keep having athletes that have other things in their lives. And most of the girls still work at least a day or two a week somewhere else, whether it's at the club, doing something within the club, that's fine. That's still something different to football. And I think we really need to keep that as part of AFLW.
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing in disguise in a way that we aren't full-time and paid, because we have to have another job, so that we have to have a career that we can fall back on, or work experience. And as you say, it's a shame in the men's that they don't sort of have that, which if you look at the American system, when they go to college, they have to, pass grades and stuff like that. So it's a wonder that hasn't came into the fold yet.
It's also the extra development and maturity that they have in America. Like they don't get drafted till they're 21. Yes, they're playing college sport, and yes, their degrees might be questionable at times as to whether they actually get what they need to get done. But they're older. They have a little bit more perspective on life, whereas we have kids that have played footy their whole life. They go to school sort of because they can play footy. So they get a scholarship to a school because they're good at footy.
Yeah.
So that's straight away just valuing the footy over the person. Then they get drafted. They're 18. They have no idea what life is because they've never lived life, because they've been at school and then they're in a football system.
And they're getting paid good money.
And told what to do. Like school, you get told what to do. You know where you need to be and when. A timetable for a football club looks exactly like it does for a year 11 or 12 student. It's, okay, we got this here, we've got this here, we've got this here. You know when you need to be and where you need to be. Then all of a sudden at 21 after 3 years, you have no idea where you need to be and when you need to do it. And and you don't know what you need to do.
Yeah.
So it's a really harsh reality for young men and young women to learn when they're in a professional system and then don't end up making it.
Yeah. And because it can be completely out of their control. They can have an injury and just like that.
That's it.
There goes everything.
Yeah.
So how would you then justify, so if we want women's salaries in AFLW and et cetera to go up, how can we still keep that aspect where we're still working and getting paid more justly?
I think making sure that there's clear elements in the CBA where there has to be at least 2 free days a week or elements like that. There are requirements like that. Some clubs take the piss out of that and aren't exactly strict with it. Some are to the letter of the law. I think naturally it's not going to grow to a point anytime soon where they're going to be making the kind of money that allows them to do that. Yes, there are, don't get me wrong, there are probably at the absolute max 5 or 6 players at a club that would be paid enough to make ends meet if they're not living at home quite comfortably on an AFLW wage, which is fantastic. But they're the players that have probably already got other careers that they've built and pathways that they've built. So I think that's a nice sort of one to lean on. I think also having an element of employment within a contract, not necessarily contractually, but making sure that that's really valued at each club. And if that's normal at your club, it's very easy for that to be normal for you as a player. If you come into a club and everyone at the club has a job or does other things outside of football or is studying, which I think a lot of the girls when they're drafted are still enrolled in a university course, most of them go straight to that or something else where they're learning new skills and stuff. I think that's really important to keep as well. And the PA is great at making sure of that. They give study grants, they give other contributions to girls that are going through uni, and speaking from experience, if you can make use of that while you're under the AFL system where they're helping to pay off your HECS debt, absolutely utilise that for all that it is worth, because your HECS debt will eat you alive when you are finished. So
it will.
It helps a lot with those structures in place. And I think naturally, because that is more the norm, I would hope that it stays that way.
Yes. Okay. So then tell us a little bit about your transition from player to analyst, coach, and what life initially looked like once you stopped playing AFLW.
Yeah, so when I stopped playing, I think I was doing some media while I was still playing. So I was commentating on AFLW games quite regularly while I was still playing. I think I was doing it in my second last and last season. I think that's when I kind of started, maybe slightly earlier than that. And I'd already worked on men's football. So when I was up in Brisbane, I'd got the job with Triple M to be a boundary rider up then for men's footy. And then after a season of that, I transitioned into the box to work on special comments. So I'd been doing a game a week for Triple M because there's only a game a week in Queensland. So I'd do a game in Brisbane, a game on the Gold Coast. Basically, they kind of schedule it so it's alternative weeks for home games for them. So I'd done a game a week for men's footy for at least sort of 2 or 3 years when I moved down here. And then somehow kept my role doing special comments in Melbourne, which I didn't expect to do when I moved down here for Triple M, because some of the players on their list or ex-players on their list, I thought their calibre of special comments would be a lot better than mine, and they're far more respected voices. But to Triple M's credit, like Ewan Giles that works there and runs their footy, he was super supportive and was like, absolutely, you're staying on specials and when you come down to Melbourne. So that was really cool and an awesome experience. And then, gradually sort of transitioned across to the AFLW stuff naturally for the broadcast, because it's really nice. It's a space where they try and get as many women's voices on there as possible to start with. So that's basically how I sort of got into the TV side of broadcasting, as opposed to radio. And then once I'd retired, I basically was just like, look, I'm far more available for all the games that you could kind of want. And then, just did more and more women's games, did more and more men's games as well, was still teaching at the time. So sort of worked all week and then worked all weekend as well. And then, I think it just like gradually evolved into having more regular games, really. That's kind of the process that I feel like. And I think I've naturally, from just doing more and more of it, just somehow gotten better and better by hearing other people or reflecting on sort of things that I've done or said, or just working out how to do it in a different way and do it in a way that is more, I guess, appealing to the listener or the viewer. So I think my first big break was getting that job at Triple M without really knowing it, and then being able to hold on to it when I moved down here, which has held me in really good stead to be a voice on the men's game as well as the women's game. Yeah.
Have you felt that now that you are the voice in the men's game as well, that you've had to constantly sort of prove your credibility?
Oh yeah, 100%. But I've kind of gotten to the point where, like, if someone's listening to me and doesn't agree that I should have an opinion on AFL, because I didn't actually technically play AFL, I played AFLW.
It's a bit tricky when you're a woman.
Absolutely. absolutely. If they question my ability to analyse the game because of that, well, they're probably not my target audience. So at first, absolutely. And I think there's definitely colleagues that you need to prove yourself to, whether or not they know that they're sort of acting that way or not. But most of the people that I've worked with have been nothing but welcoming and have been, I think it's probably me feeling like I had something to prove to them rather than them thinking that they needed me to prove something to them. So yeah, I think it's always difficult. Sort of, there's always going to be people that don't want to listen to a woman tell them about footy, and especially in an analysis role, different if you're calling because you're black and white saying what's going on, whereas I play a role where I'm sort of critiquing or saying what was good, saying what wasn't so good. I mean, if you don't want to listen to me, don't listen to Triple M, and then you won't have to deal with it, or don't turn on Channel 7 and you'll be fine. And that's fine. My employers think that I do a great job, and that's all that really matters to me. And people that I respect, if they have feedback, I'll take it on board. But if I don't really have anything to do with them, I'm not going to listen to the feedback that I get from old mate with a car as his profile picture. So
holding up a big fish.
On.
Yeah. Absolutely. So obviously, you know, AFL commentary for women is still pretty new in terms of its space. So what have been the biggest challenges that you've found in that couple of years that you have been doing it?
I think one of the barriers that we really have as women at times is, barring AFLW, which I just touched on, we're really happy to have as many women on the coverage as possible, but we still seem to be in this mindset where if we have one woman, that's all we need.
So it's tokenistic almost.
Yeah, not necessarily tokenistic, but sort of like we've got this group for, I don't know, whatever night we might be doing of footy. We probably can't put her there because we've already got a woman there. We don't need two women, if that makes sense. And that is absolutely, none of my employees have ever said this to me, but we seem very content with having one face that is a woman. And we're not kind of to the space where we might have a couple of women on the coverage or a team of women on the coverage. And that's something that at Triple M is phenomenal, because I think there's been multiple games where we've had two females in special comms doing a men's game of football, which would not often happen. Most of the other boxes don't have women in the special comments box. Most of the time, sort of having a look through the broadcast, there might be one woman in another radio box, but there's never multiple women in other radio boxes. And then sort of having lead callers that are females as well as a female specialist. I think that's one area that has been challenging without it being something that's on the agenda. I don't think it's widely talked about, and I don't even know if people understand that they're doing it, the people that are in positions of power to make these decisions. And I would hope that someday there's going to be an all-female broadcast team talking about men's football, because we're more than happy for an all-female broadcast team to talk about women's football. There seems to be a little bit of a bridge that we need to gap in that respect, to have multiple women's voices on the same piece of football coverage or the same football show or whatever it might be. I think that's probably one challenge that there's been. And I think the other one is just sort of, I guess, being able to have a voice in a place where typically there haven't been many women that have had a voice, and we're becoming more like accepting of it, and I've accepted it myself, but there's still people that are resistant to that. And I think there's times where I sort of look around, and this was early on in my career, and I was like, why am I here? Like, I'm commentating with Brian Taylor, James Brayshaw, Daisy Thomas. Like, why am I here? Like, I've done this for two or 3 years at this point, and I was like, what can I offer that these guys can't? And then I've slowly learnt that I can actually offer something completely different because I see the game completely different. Because yes, I'm a female, but I've also come from a whole different part of life. I've learnt how to explain things to people through university, or I've naturally learnt through teaching people. And I have different things that I was either good at that they weren't good at, or vice versa. And that's what I have to offer. But it took me a fair while to work that out, that I can actually offer something different, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, even for all of us who have played with you and everything, you do explain things extremely well. And it's just so nice seeing someone on TV who, you know, you haven't grown up with the media world. You branched out into that, and you're just an everyday person that knows what you're talking about.
And
you
I am just average Joe. More average.
You're well beyond average, that's for sure. But I guess also when you do build this sort of brand for yourself and you are opening yourself up for more criticism, how have you found social media to have played a role in probably building your brand in a good way, but it's obviously very detrimental in some of the stuff that's being said?
Yeah, I think probably one of the hardest things, and probably one of the best things as well, was I think there's all this like conversation around sort of sexuality in the men's space of football. And I think AFLW sort of coming along and me playing in that when I was very comfortable with who I was already as a gay woman, to be in that spotlight when I had already I'd come out, I knew who I was, I was fully accepting of myself. I think that was a real blessing, because if I was going through that sort of internal battles with myself, accepting my own sexuality and doing that in a place where I'm sort of not in the spotlight, because we're not in the spotlight, but we're playing a sport that's broadcast on national TV. That would have been really hard. And I think that's an element that I am very grateful for, that I'd already accepted that about myself, because there is a lot of sort of disgusting homophobia out there around women's footy and just anything in general, any homophobia in general on social media, because it seems to be a place where people try and say the most vile thing that they possibly could about someone, which is just disgusting anyway. And sort of I've gotten to the point where I'm like, well, all of you are only saying that to try and outdo each other. Yes. So that's the first element that I'm super grateful for, because it doesn't really matter what anyone would say online or to my face about my sexuality. I'm very accepting of who I am, and if you have a problem with that, that's your problem, not mine. And then the element of, I guess, just constantly having a go at me because I'm a woman or because of something. And I think I said it on Dill's podcast, like, people will just constantly change the goalpost when you have, or when they disagree with you on something. And I've learnt that, like, oh, well, like, your analysis of the Collingwood game was completely off because of X, Y, Z. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's fair enough. Like, I'm glad you just, like, disagreeing with that is so fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But it's like, oh, great, we've got a woman telling us how to play football. It's like, well,
and God forbid she doesn't have an iron shirt.
I know. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, and that they're like the things. I don't bite back often. So, like, people are like, oh, I love how you bite back. And I'm like, look, I don't bite back often. There are just some times where things get to the point where I'm like, this is actually ridiculous. And the iron shirt one was the pinnacle of it for me, because first of all, I was on radio. So what does an iron shirt have to do with it? Second of all, I'd travelled all day. I'd worked the entire day. I got to the Gabba like 5 minutes before going on air. So I put my T-shirt on out of my suitcase that had then obviously had creases in it because God forbid I didn't have time to do that. But it was just one of those things. And it actually took, the thing that annoyed me the most is I was talking about the Noah Bolter situation, and that is a very serious situation about what played out there and whether or not it needed to be a club stance or an AFL stance, and talking about that. And that was the thing that was the most important. And then for all of, like, some random amount of people that have just chimed in because someone has mentioned an unironed shirt, and then the pile on of, oh, why would we listen to you? You can't even present yourself properly. Like, all of this. And I was just like, okay, this one's like, enough's enough. I'm so done with this. Like, come on, get over it. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
No.
So that sort of thing, I was just like, okay, I'm biting back at this one because it's ridiculous. And then, the concept of understanding that people will constantly just pick on something that you can't change. Like, I couldn't iron my shirt because it had already been out. I'd sat there in that's done. Yeah. The clip's been put up, so I can't change that. Or they'll start talking about something and be like, oh, blah, 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 but what would she know? She's a woman. Yes, I am a woman. I can't change that either. Oh, well, you didn't play AFL because AFLW is not AFL. Correct. I didn't play AFL. So I've learned very quickly that no matter what you try to do, whether you engage with them on something that actually is something that you could argue back, ultimately their next rebuttal will be something that you absolutely cannot change. So what's the point? What's the point in engaging at all?
Yeah. And if you had to give advice for women wanting to move into this space and sort of live with all these things that we have to deal with that probably men don't have to, what was the best piece of advice you'd give?
I'd probably give the advice around, probably similar to sort of what I just said, is by biting back, I don't think you really get anything out of it. I think like that is what they really want ultimately, because they're sad people that are on their phone 24/7 or are on there to engage with other people, to cause conflict, to poke the bear essentially. And if you allow them to do that and constantly go back at them, I actually think they get more of a thrill out of that.
Yeah.
And ultimately they're nameless, they're faceless people that so desperately want to be named and have their face in the spotlight. And this sounds really egotistical, but at the end of the day, I have the job that they want to do.
Exactly.
So for me, that's enough of a victory that they have to sit and watch my face on Friday Night Footy on Channel 7 and absolutely hate it, while a lot of other people watch and they absolutely love it. That for me is my little win, and that's what I'll reflect on, because I have the job that they want at the end of the day.
Absolutely. That's the high road through and through. I love it. So let's get into a bit about women's sport in Australia. Obviously, we've seen massive progress over the past couple of years. We've had, the Women's World Cup, which attracted, I think, 11 million viewers or something like that, which was, the most watched TV program in over 2 decades. How do you see women's sport in Australia compared to the rest of the world? And what areas can we actually improve on to see real change?
I think the unique thing with that sort of Women's World Cup was there's not many times as a country we're united. And that was a beautiful moment for sport in general in Australia, but particularly women, and having a female sport where the country had kind of banded together. And you sort of combine that with the women's cricket as well. Like, they are the most successful Australian team in the history of sport, men's or women's, the Australian women cricket team. And that's ridiculous and something that probably flies under the radar a little bit.
Yep.
But I think being at the Women's T20 World Cup where they had that push to sell out the G, Katy Perry played, all of that was a momentous occasion. And I think the more moments as Australian women in sport we can have of those, the bigger win it is for other sports that don't have that uniting ability, because there is no national team, if that makes sense. So we all agree that we go for the Australian women's cricket team. We all agree that we go for the Australian men's cricket team. That's a uniting factor. Doesn't matter whether it's men or women, whereas other sports that are more domestic have that, well, we don't all go for the same team. And that's also sort of something that is a benefit to that, but also can hinder sort of viewership and things like that. So I think the more that we can promote sports that have national teams, the better it is, because it is that uniting factor, which does help shine the spotlight on women's sport. And I think that's the other thing that we can probably learn from other sports and other countries is women's sport is women's sport. And we don't need to compete with one another. We don't need to compete within the sport either. You look at sort of the Caitlin Clark phenomenon in the WNBA, and like, I find it quite comical how much tall poppy syndrome the other players have of Caitlin Clark. Because I understand from a sort of foundation player, or from we've paved the way, we've been really we've been slogging at this for years, and then this young girl comes through and is, in my opinion, if I'm the player, that she's no better than me, but we've apparently all adopted her as the face of this sport.
Yeah.
You need to realize that she is the key to growing your game. Exactly. And she has single-handedly grown the game. And that's from someone that has been attracted to watching the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark. So I'll put my hand up and say that's sort of my pathway to it. So maybe I have a different opinion to someone that's watched it from afar for a long, long time. But you only have to look at things like ticket sales when she is or isn't in the team, or viewership when she is or isn't playing, to have a pretty clear understanding that has a big direct correlation. And I think the AFLW needs to lean on that a little bit more and start to promote a lot of stars from the competition and building up stars. And we hear about, obviously, the young players that are coming through that have now had a genuine pathway. I think we really need to embrace that and start to see some of the skills that we have on display. Don't get me wrong, some of the girls that have played from day one are absolutely the best players in the comp and will be for the next 10 to 15 years without doubt. But we need to also promote the young stars that are doing incredible things in their first or second year and playing every game or taking the league by storm, because that helps to grow the game as well. And that's a lot easier to say as someone that's now part of the broadcast of it, as opposed to someone that's playing, because I know when you're a player, you're a little bit more possessive and protective of your patch. And that you're the best at what you can be, or this player in your team is way better than that person that's getting all of the accolades for it. But ultimately, you need to accept that grows the game, and that's how you get eyeballs on the game as well.
Absolutely. And it's what America does really well, is that you even just look in the NBA, is you have these personalities, and they're the brands, and they're where brands want to put their money towards, and it is benefiting the sport as a whole. So I think that's something we can definitely move into more in the AFLW.
And the best part of it is it's not based around sexualizing any of the players. I know previously we've had the lingerie football phenomenon, which is just disgraceful and disgusting. But people like Caitlin Clark, because she is a phenomenal basketballer, not because of whatever she might look like, not saying she's unattractive or attractive. This is purely based on her performance. And I think as females in all sports, tennis, any individual sport as well, there's been this element of sexualizing the athlete, which is why they sell a whole heap of stuff. We're past that in women's sport now. We're selling the best athlete and the best player and the best this, not the best looking. And I think I'm so glad we've moved past that, because we're celebrating the athletes for who they are as athletes, not because of what they look like.
Yeah. So on an individual level, what is something that we can all do today to promote women's sports?
I think engaging with it. I think attending women's sports is the biggest way you can support women's sport. Go to the games, without doubt. The more tickets that are sold, the more people that are in stadiums, the more popular it looks on broadcast, the more popular it is, the better the product, the more investment that there is, and that is the way to invest in women's sport. If you're someone that thinks, oh God, I hear all these things about AFLW or NRLW or A-League women's or whatever it might be, but I don't know how to help or how to do this, go to a game. Absolutely go to a game. Buy a ticket, go to the game and enjoy it, and also help support by creating noise, supporting athletes online as well, because that has a lot of traction and can support in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. At a more systemic level, say here at 4TG, we have a fair bit of sway, you see. So say we put you in front of every board member in Australia.
Yes.
Scary times. What would you ask for?
I think funding is probably the most important thing at this stage. Funding broadcast, funding any different element that you can of women's sport, whether it's grassroots all the way up. That sounds like we're asking for money and all of this, but like it is grossly underfunded, especially just talking from an AFLW perspective. And there'll be that many people that comment on this and like, oh, how about you make some money before you ask for more money? Well, it's called an investment for a reason. That is why things are invested in. That is why companies start. If you want to start a business, how long do you reckon it'll take you to make money when you start a business? You're not going to start a business thinking, well, in my first month, I will make $4 million. So that is why I'm going to start a business. That is why there's so many failed businesses, because people pour money into things that they think will return a profit for them, and it doesn't ultimately. And that is what an investment is. And that is why we need to invest in women's sport, because I guarantee all of the sports that have taken off before us, the investment has been put in to start with, and it has in turn returned a profit or helped to promote whatever it is that you're promoting or whatever sport you are involved with. And that is the easiest way to support something, by investing in it, so that they can employ more coaches, they can give the girls more access to facilities, they can pay them a little bit more, which means they can train a little bit more, which in turn improves the product. All of that adds to a better product. It adds to more people at the game. It adds to more people watching the game. That is how you sort of invest in women's sport.
Absolutely. Now, to tie this all up, we have a signature segment, which is knowing what you know now and what you have experienced now. What would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Oh, probably to keep playing cricket.
No, then we wouldn't have the Kate Mac we have today.
Yeah, there's so much more money in cricket, and all the girls I played alongside are like gone to World Cups. They travel the bloody world. Play an international sport, not a domestic sport.
They're not on Friday night footy though, are they?
No, they're not, but they're watching it.
Yeah.
They're in their bloody T20 competitions in India and West Indies and travelling the world. So, no. Probably, I think just keep enjoying what you're enjoying, because ultimately and it sounds so cliche, but like when you're enjoying what you're doing, like you're not really working. You're not doing things that are a chore. And when they do become a chore, that's when you need to probably make a decision as to whether you continue to do that, or you sort of come to the point where you make a different decision, or you pivot a little bit within your life, because obviously things aren't always fun and they're not always easy. But when you're enjoying it, those times, or when you love it, those times that aren't easy and that are significantly harder than what you've experienced, it becomes a lot easier to get through them. And I think ultimately that's something that I sort of fall back on. If I'm doing something I enjoy or have enjoyed at some period of time, there's a reason that I should keep doing it. Or if I've sort of lost that love and that passion for it as well, there's no shame in admitting that either, and sort of taking a step to the side or taking some time away from it and reflecting and deciding whether that's what you want to continue to do.
Very well said. Well, Kate Mac, thank you so much for joining the podcast, and you really are a trailblazer in the sport and now from behind the camera, and you deserve everything you have achieved. We're so excited and we can't wait to see what's next for you in store.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been an honour to be your first guest on 4TG.
You've set the bar pretty high. All right, thank you everyone for listening. Please be sure to like 4TG on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and we have some very exciting guests in store. This one was for the girls.